All right, really quickly, let's move on to Ja Morant's return. So the Grizz get a big win at home versus the Rockets today, 130 to 125. Jaren Jackson Jr., 37 and 10. I was texting with some of the guys on our team before the show. If I were to ask you guys if Jaren Jackson has any chance to be a better player than Ja Morant in a few years, would you guys think that is legitimate? And I don't know what I think yet. I'd really have to think about it. But, like, here's the thing. I think Jaren Jackson can be the best defensive player in the league. I think he has that potential. I also think he has real downhill force combined with a semi-reliable perimeter shot. And if he can improve his handle enough, and if he can improve his court vision enough, if he's a reliable 25-point per game guy who's also the best player, a defense player in the league, like, that's a top-tier superstar. Like, that's Anthony Davis-ish, right? You know? So, like, if he can get to that level, that's I don't know if Ja can be a top-tier superstar. He can't be a top-tier superstar until he can figure out how to be at least a net neutral on the defensive end of the floor. My gut says I still think Ja will be better in the long run, but for Memphis fans, that's not a bad thing. Like, if Jaren Jackson has the potential to be better than Ja in the future, that's fantastic for you, because that means you could have two superstars when it's all said and done. Ja Morant came off the bench for 17 and 5. He was plus 11. I'm not going to talk about the off-court stuff with Ja. I've said that a million times to you guys. It's not what you come to me for. I'm not going to pontificate about all of the many factors at play in his situation. You guys come to me for the basketball. But here's the thing. Ja Morant is the only legitimate chance that the Grizzlies have to win a championship this year. That's just a fact. It's funny. I talked a lot with Sam Vecini about this yesterday when we were talking Grizzlies, but I look at that slow down half court dynamic a lot with teams. And really, to me, I think the biggest swing factor for Memphis to win a championship potentially this year is Ja Morant needs to be very accurate with his pull-up three-point shot. Here's the reason why I feel that way. Teams are going to pack the paint. That's just the reality. Memphis loves to play two bigs because they're a big, physically imposing, type of team, especially with Brandon Clark out. I think you're going to see a lot of Xavier Tillman. And if Steven Adams can get back, I think you're going to see a lot of Steven Adams. They're going to play big. So there's going to be a lot of bodies in the paint. You are going to see exaggerated ignoring of Dillon Brooks. And Memphis needs Dillon Brooks because he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, and he's going to take a lot of those significant perimeter assignments. Desmond Bane obviously is a great shooting threat. But the reality of how that breaks down is Ja Morant's going to be playing pick and roll 2-on-3 a lot. But that 2-on-3 is not going to be blitzing or double teaming. It's going to be digging down from the wings. And so in a lot of cases, the best shots he's going to be able to get is defenders sagging back or going underneath screens with Ja with the ball in his hands. He's going to have to be consistent knocking down that pull-up three. This year, 3.3 pull-up threes per game. He's shooting just 30.6%. And that was with him coming out the gates red hot. So I'm not super optimistic about it. As of right now, I do not have the Grizzlies on my list of teams that really can win a championship this year. I just don't think they have the level of half-court shot creation. But there's a lot to be excited about. Jaren Jackson, that interior defense is real. Dillon Brooks, he's going to be a free agent this summer. God knows what he's going to make. But he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. They got a lot of foundational pieces. They've just got to tie off some of their half-court shot creation stuff. But it's good to see Ja Morant back playing basketball. The Clippers. So we're going to talk about the Paul George injury in a minute. It was a bizarre game. One of the most bizarre final possessions of a game I've ever seen. Kawhi Leonard, who's renowned as one of the best clutch players in the league and a guy who can create his own shot, literally doesn't get a shot off on Lou Dort on the final possession. There's an interesting dynamic there with with cutters that I want to talk about here in just a minute. But, the real story, like, Kawhi didn't get a shot off. Yeah, that's fine. On the other end of the floor, the Thunder were just walking the Clippers down to the basket every time down the floor. There were 3 straight buckets for on Kawhi Leonard, just driving past Kawhi Leonard. Isaiah Joe, hard drive on Kawhi Leonard, step back into a little short jump shot that he made. Jalen Williams just attacked a closeout on Kawhi and just dusted him by his right shoulder and got to the basket for a nasty dunk. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, straight ISO. Kawhi Leonard in position, left elbow, just beats him to the middle of the floor for the layup. And then on the final two possessions for the Thunder, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just walked Russell Westbrook down into a foul, then got Eric Gordon on a switch and walked him down to the basket for a little floater. So the real story was they just couldn't guard, which is a whole other issue. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But I did want to say what I thought was interesting on the final possession with Kawhi. There were two cuts that took place on this play. And one of them was kind of a screen. I think it was from Marcus Morris. He comes over, does a quick pick and pop. And then there was another play where Russ cuts right before the final seconds. Russ cuts through to the opposite corner, but it's just a touch too late. Here's the thing: cutting is an excellent way to open up space for a guy to go to work because you're naturally going to drag defenders away with you. But you need to time it right to give the guy an opportunity to go to work. What happened there was Marcus Morris ran his cut right after Kawhi was finishing a play. He wasn't ready to capitalize on it. And then on the final attempt that he made, where he took the step back, but he didn't get off in time, Russ cut, but not until it was too late for Kawhi to drive that way. If Russ cuts 2 seconds earlier, then Kawhi can take a hard couple of dribbles to that way, maybe pump fake and try to get him out of position and get up into a shot. So just a couple awkward things there. But the reality is Paul George came down and took a nasty knee injury. It wasn't quite as bad as it looked, but he's going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks. And here's the thing. I was already seriously considering removing the Clippers from my list of real contenders based solely on the fact that they had no rim protection relative to the great rim protection you need to win a championship. But I didn't remove them yet because technically I consider Paul George and Kawhi Leonard to be kind of front court type talent. And I thought, man, if they just are really locked in defensively, then that can kind of make up for that. But here's the thing. They are not overcoming their lack of rim protection without otherworldly superstar play from Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And it's just too much to ask for Paul George, who is a rhythm-based pull-up shooter, to walk into the middle of a first-round series against what's probably going to be a very good team, a team probably like the Sacramento Kings, and to just suddenly walk into that series and look like prime Paul George. And so as of right now, I think their question marks are too much. So I'm removing the Clippers from my list of real contenders, keeping it down to just 7 now. And that's the Celtics, Bucks, Sixers, and the Nuggets, Suns, and the Lakers and I'm missing one. Who am I missing? The Warriors. So that's my list of 7 as of right now. All right, before we get out of here, let's go out to the Eastern Conference. So speaking of the Kings, the Celtics just beat the shit out of them last night, 132-109 in Sacramento. I will say, the Celtics went on their run in the third quarter. The third quarter for Sacramento against Boston was one of the worst defensive performances I've ever seen from an NBA team that's not deliberately trying to lose basketball games. They were not getting matched up in transition. They were there was a play where not even a transition play. Celtics come up the floor in a standard half-court set. There's just nobody guarding Jaylen Brown on the left wing. Swing pass, Jaylen Brown knocks down the shot. Jaylen Brown was relentlessly attacking De'Aaron Fox and Keegan Murray in isolation. There's no help. Then when they do help, it's reckless. There's no organization to it. Sometimes they help out of the weak side corner. Sometimes they help out of the strong side corner. When they do help, they just kind of run into the play. They're not actively attacking the basketball. No one's trying to rotate around. It was honestly embarrassing watching the Celtics just go for a layup line and easy kick out threes for that entire quarter. They had a 174 offensive rating in the third quarter. They're at home with a chance to beat one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and they had a 174 defensive rating in that third quarter. Sacramento did. For the game, they had a 141 defensive rating. And, the perimeter size thing was really starting to show up because Jayson Tatum was catching Kessler Edwards a lot. They were beating him just with quick seals underneath the basket, just with how much size they have to give up at those spots. But what was interesting is we can talk a lot about their defense, and I've talked a lot about Sacramento's defense all season. But the biggest thing that concerned me in that game for Sacramento is Boston kind of locked them down in the second quarter and fourth quarter in particular. They held them to 115 offensive rating in the game for what is the best offense in the history of the league right now. They were switching almost every ball screen. Basically anything that didn't involve Robert Williams, they were switching. And De'Aaron Fox was not attacking when he saw those opportunities. When they would switch, they would just front Domantas Sabonis as he's rolling to the basket with lots of help around him, finding guys that they could ignore. It was a really impressive defensive performance, and it comes down to a couple of different things, because we're going to talk Celtics here in just a second. But the reality of playoff basketball is easy baskets are not there anymore when you're playing against good teams. They will be there against Sacramento because they don't play any defense, but you don't have those easy baskets anymore. And it is going to come down to, against switching, can Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox consistently create an advantage? And I think they'll be fine. They'll be fine, but they're not going to be the otherworldly offense that they were in the regular season. And that's when their defense will come up to be a problem. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Jaylen Brown, because Jaylen Brown had this really bizarre quote that came out. I believe it was before the Kings game. As a matter of fact, I'm certain it was. And he said, quote, he was asked about his future in Boston. And he said, quote, "I don't know. As long as I'm needed. It's not up to me. We'll see how they feel about me over time, and I feel about them over time. Hopefully, whatever it is, it makes sense. But I will stay where I'm wanted. I will stay where I'm needed and treated correct." End quote. Now, here's the thing. That is a weird quote. I won't lie. But I'm going to say the same thing I said about the Warriors last week. Nobody likes to lose. I hate to break it to you. I believe coming into the Kings game, the Celtics had lost 6 out of 11 games. They've been playing some sloppy basketball. And we'll talk about them as a team here in just a minute. But like that sort of thing is just natural competitive reaction to no one enjoys losing basketball games. You know what? The Warriors looked pretty dejected the other day, when they were on that losing streak. But you know what? You're on the road. You beat a Houston team. You go into Dallas, and Steph makes a nice little drop-off pass to Draymond Green, and Steph is flexing and screaming at the crowd, and Draymond Green's on the ground flexing, and everything's fine. Because winning cures everything. So the reality is I think the Celtics will go into the first round and beat the hell out of whoever they end up matched up with, which apparently that's up in the air now, because, again, if Boston toasts away the 2 seed, they deserve what's coming to them. It just, you need to find a way to have home court for that particular matchup. It's already brutal that they've toasted away the 1 seed, because the 1 seed might only have to play one of those guys as opposed to 2 of them, right? But I'm not worried about Jaylen Brown's comments. The reality is the basketball fit is natural. He kind of complements Jayson Tatum in a lot of ways, because Jayson Tatum doesn't have that creative shot-making piece. Jaylen Brown does, so he's kind of the perfect complement to him. They're an excellent defensive duo. They're going to win a lot of games. He's going to get a supermax contract. I think Jaylen Brown is definitively a top 15 player in this league, so I don't see any reason why he would not get the paycheck that he wants. So all of this is going to break out and be fine. I'm not going to suddenly care about Jaylen Brown's comments when I didn't care about Golden State's bad body language. To me, it just doesn't really matter. As far as Boston goes, I could not be less worried about them. I know there's a lot of negativity because they haven't finished the season as strong as you would hope. But here's the thing. All of the players that made the finals run last year are better this year. Tatum's better. Jaylen Brown's better. Derek White has been unbelievable, although he's struggling to get into Joe Mazzulla's rotation a little bit. Malcolm Brogdon has been a home run piece. Grant Williams has been a little inconsistent as of late, but he's dealing with an elbow injury. Everyone's playing great. They got off to such a hot start. They had such a big lead. They've lost a little bit of that urgency. It's going to click in. They're going to have a winnable first-round series. Yeah, I know they might end up matched up with Miami. Miami, they just don't have the perimeter size to handle Boston compared even to what they had last year. So I'm just not particularly worried about that. So, I remain very, very bullish on the Celtics. I still think they are a top tier contender with Milwaukee.